Lil Durk is facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars, and he isn't taking it quietly. His lawyers are fighting back. His family is accusing prosecutors of using false evidence, and Durk is maintaining his innocence. But one recent courtroom win could change everything. Lil Durk is heading into a federal jury trial, with a possible life sentence attached to his name. Prosecutors have laid out a case, accusing him of directing a murder-for-hire plot connected to the fatal 2022 shooting of Quando Rondo's cousin, Saviaya Robinson. A recent breakdown of the month's biggest hip-hop court dates put it plainly: a 2022 ambush near Los Angeles' Beverly Center will place Lil Durk before a federal jury on August 20, with prosecutors accusing the Chicago rapper of ordering the attempted killing of Quando Rondo, an attack that missed its intended target and killed Rondo's cousin, Saviaya Lil Pab Robinson, and Durk pleading not guilty while facing a possible life sentence if convicted. That's the stake on the table. Not a fine, not probation, life. And Durk's reaction to that stake has been consistent from the jump: deny everything, fight every motion, and let his legal team do the talking in the meantime. His lead attorney, Drew Findling, has been the loudest voice, pushing back on the government's case at every turn. When the trial date kept sliding earlier in the year, Findling told Rolling Stone the defense was ready to go, saying, "We would have been ready to try the case, but that the court decided more time was needed because it's a complex case." Then in July, with the trial locked in for August 20, Findling doubled down outside the courthouse. After a judge sided with the defense on severing newly added charges, Findling told Rolling Stone the team had stayed locked in on Durk's case for close to 2 years, saying they'd been unwavering in our commitment to Mr. Banks and his innocence for 21 months, and we're looking forward to the August 20, 2026 trial. That's Durk's camp, through his lawyer, reacting to the reality that the sentence hanging over him is now days away from being decided by a jury. His wife, India Royale, has been reacting in her own way too, publicly, repeatedly, and emotionally. She's been photographed beside him at hearings, and she's used her platform to push back on the government's case directly. When the family put out a statement calling into question how prosecutors built their case, Royale posted it herself, writing on behalf of the family that as a family, they were asking the public, the fans, and the culture to stand with them, to stand for truth, for fairness, for the voice. The voice is one of Durk's nicknames, and the choice of words there wasn't an accident. It was a direct appeal from his own household as the sentence question loomed larger. Royale went further than a general appeal. She accused the government of building its case on shaky ground, and the family statement she shared didn't hold back, alleging that recent developments had exposed. The recent developments in Durk's legal case have brought a harsh truth to light. The government presented false evidence to a grand jury to indict him, calling it a violation of the very system that's supposed to protect all of us. That's a wife reacting to the possibility that her husband could die in federal custody, doing it in public, on the record with her name attached. And there's a third voice in this: Durk's own family beyond Royale, who released statements standing behind him as the legal fight dragged into its second year. The consistent message from that corner has been that he's innocent, that the case has been built unfairly, and that supporters need to keep showing up as the court dates get closer. Even as the case picked up new charges and new complexity through 2026, the family's position never moved. Not guilty, standing firm, asking the culture to stand with them. So 3 distinct reactions are already on the record before a single witness takes the stand. In front of that jury, Durk's legal team, through Findling, treating every hearing like a fight they intend to win. His wife, through her own statements and posts, standing publicly beside him and calling out the prosecution directly. And his family issuing a joint statement accusing the government of building a case on bad evidence. All 3 of them reacting to the same number hanging over Durk's head: the possibility of a life sentence, decided by a jury that started hearing this case on August 20. That date matters. It's not a random point on a calendar. It's the date a judge locked in, after prosecutors tried to add new charges just weeks before trial, and a judge sharply pushed back. Billboard was in the room for that hearing and reported the judge ruled that Durk would go to trial as scheduled on August 20, and during the hearing, sharply admonished prosecutors for tacking on additional charges and then requesting to push the trial back. Findling called that ruling one of the better days of his career, telling reporters it was one of those days that makes it so rewarding to be a trial attorney, adding, "We so appreciate the thoroughness that took place in that courtroom today." That's the moment. That's where this stands right now. A man who spent nearly 2 years in a cell without bail, a jury about to be seated, and a legal team, a wife, and a family, who've all made their positions clear before the first witness is sworn in. To understand how he got here and why the stakes got this high, you have to go back to where this entire case started. Every single count Lil Durk is facing traces back to one thing: the killing of King Von in November 2020. Von wasn't just a friend. He was Durk's artist, his collaborator, one of the anchors of the Only the Family label Durk, built from the ground up. When Von was shot and killed during a confrontation in Atlanta, it sent a wave through the entire OTF camp, and prosecutors say that wave never settled. According to the federal case, the retaliation for Von's death didn't stay in Atlanta. Prosecutors allege that gunmen connected to Durk's camp tracked down Taekwon Quando Rondo Bowman, a rapper who'd had a public back and forth with Von's circle, and followed him to Los Angeles. The government's account of what happened next is graphic. A group of gunmen tracked Bowman to Los Angeles in 2022, then stalked and ambushed him at a gas station near the Beverly Center, firing at least 18 rounds from multiple weapons, including a machine gun, and Bowman's cousin, Saviah Robinson, was struck and killed while standing outside a black Escalade. Robinson wasn't the target. Rondo was, but Robinson is the one who ended up dead. And that's the death at the center of every count Durk now faces. The arrest itself, when it finally came in October 2024, read like something out of a movie. Federal agents believed Durk was trying to leave the country. An FBI agent involved in the case said he had booked 2 flights from South Florida airports, one headed to Dubai and another to Switzerland, then arranged a private flight to Italy. But authorities arrested him before he could board. He was taken into custody in Broward County, Florida, alongside several associates, and from that moment forward, he never got out. Since that arrest, the bond requests have piled up, and every single one has been denied. His team offered a package worth $4.5 million, including cash, round-the-clock home detention, and electronic monitoring. Rejected. The judge in the case wasn't moved by the scale of the offer or the conditions attached to it. Durk has sat in custody the entire time since, watching the case grow more complicated with every passing month. And it did grow. What started as a straightforward murder-for-hire indictment turned into something much bigger. Prosecutors didn't stop at the 2022 Los Angeles shooting. They kept adding layers. A 2019 Atlanta shooting, then a January 2022 killing in Chicago that they say Durk had a hand in as the alleged leader of a street gang. By June 2026, a grand jury had returned a third superseding indictment that fundamentally changed the shape of the case, accusing Durk of acting as the leader of a menacing Chicago street gang and offering a reward that led to a killing. His defense didn't take that quietly. They called the new indictment pathetic, arguing it was prosecutors scrambling to shore up a case that wasn't holding together on its own. Findling's team went further in court filings, describing the new charges as an admission of weakness. Dressed up to look like strength, lipstick on a pig, and an acknowledgement of weakness. One detail that's followed the case since day one is the government's decision to lean on Durk's own music as evidence. Prosecutors pointed to lyrics from his 2021 remix of Who Wants Smoke as proof of tension with Rondo, and a judge allowed that material in. They went further with a song called Pissed Me Off, released by Durk in 2021, arguing the track showed intent to enact revenge for the people responsible for Von's death. His defense pushed back hard on that read, arguing the song was an emotional response to the death of Banks' brother Dante, not a confession set to a beat. The judge sided with prosecutors anyway, ruling the music video itself could be shown to the jury. That's the tension that's defined this entire case from the start. The government treating Durk's art as evidence of intent, his team treating it as exactly what it's always been, a rapper processing grief and trauma, the only way he knows how. It's the same argument that's played out in other high-profile rap prosecutions in recent years, and it's one of the sharpest edges of this case heading into trial. By the time prosecutors filed their third round of charges, Durk was staring at a case that had grown from a single 2022 shooting into an accusation that he'd been running violence out of Chicago for years, tied to multiple killings across 3 different cities. That's a massive jump from where things started, and it's exactly why the fight over how those charges would be tried, together or separately, became one of the biggest battlegrounds of the whole case. Once the racketeering charges landed, the entire case turned into a fight about scope. Prosecutors wanted everything in front of one jury. The 2022 Los Angeles shooting, the Chicago killing, The Atlanta shooting, all of it woven into one narrative, about Durk allegedly running violence through his crew for years. His defense wanted the opposite. They wanted the new count stripped out entirely, arguing it wasn't fair to try a man for a 2022 shooting while dragging in years of unrelated allegations right before the jury was seated. Durk's team filed a motion to sever those new counts just weeks before the scheduled trial date, and the filing didn't hold back. The rapper's legal team filed a motion to sever counts in the latest indictment against him, or, alternately, to throw out the newest indictment entirely. The timing was deliberate. Prosecutors had waited until the case was almost at trial to file the new charges, and Durk's lawyers argued that was no accident. It was an attempt to overwhelm the defense, right when it had the least amount of time to respond. The judge overseeing the case, U.S. District Judge Michael W. Fitzgerald, wasn't shy about grilling the government over that decision either. During a hearing that summer, he pressed prosecutors on why they'd waited so long to bring charges tied to the January 2022 Chicago killing, expressing real skepticism about whether that material belonged anywhere near the trial that was about to start. Reporting from the hearing described Fitzgerald as harshly questioning the government's decision to add new charges just weeks before the case was set to go in front of a jury. That skepticism turned into a win for Durk. Fitzgerald ultimately granted the defense's motion to sever, ruling that the newly added Chicago-related counts would be tried separately, while Durk's Los Angeles murder-for-hire trial remained set to begin August 20, 2026, with Fitzgerald saying the government failed to show it would be prejudiced by two trials. That ruling mattered enormously. It meant the jury hearing the case that started this month would only be looking at the 2022 Los Angeles shooting and the death of Saviah Robinson, not years of accumulated allegations stretching across 3 states. Findling framed the win in stark terms, telling Rolling Stone the defense had stayed locked in for almost 2 years and was ready to face the narrower case in front of them. There was one more wrinkle buried in that ruling too. If Durk walks free from the August trial, his team could have grounds to fight the second trial, the one covering the Chicago and racketeering counts, on double jeopardy grounds. Since if the August 20 trial ends with an acquittal for Banks, it's possible he could fight the second trial in Los Angeles on double jeopardy grounds. That's not a guarantee. It's a legal door that stays open depending on what the jury decides in the trial happening right now. But it shows how much is actually riding on this specific case, separate from everything else stacked on top of it. Getting the trial to even reach this point took nearly 2 years of delays. It was originally supposed to happen in January 2025, then it slid to October, then January 2026, then April, then May. Each delay came with its own set of arguments, and each one kept Durk sitting in custody without bail while the calendar moved further away from his arrest. The reasoning behind the delays wasn't hidden. Prosecutors said they were dealing with an enormous volume of material, with one filing noting they were reviewing over 30,000 pages of evidence, including digital files and surveillance footage. A California judge explained the latest of those delays by pointing to just how unusual the case had become, writing that it was unusual and so complex, due to the nature of the prosecution and the number of defendants, that it was unreasonable to expect the case to be ready any sooner. Durk's team wasn't always on board with those delays either. When the case slid from October 2025 to January 2026, court records showed the trial delayed again until January 2026, with Durk's defense strongly objecting, citing his right to a speedy trial. That's a defendant who, despite everything stacked against him, kept pushing to get in front of a jury faster, not slower. It's a subtle detail, but it matters. Innocent or guilty, a man sitting in custody without bail for going on 2 years wants his case resolved, not stretched out indefinitely. Then there was the anonymous jury fight, which added another layer of tension right before trial. Prosecutors revealed that a judge and a member of the prosecution team had received threats months earlier, and they used that as grounds to push for jurors whose identities would be kept confidential. Durk's team pushed back, arguing the secrecy undercut the fairness of the whole proceeding, and that the threats hadn't even been disclosed to them at the time they were made. It's one of the more unusual wrinkles in a case that's had no shortage of them. 16 jurors chosen for a trial where their names may never become public, sitting in judgment of a man whose entire career has been built on being recognizable. By the time the severance ruling landed and the trial date held firm for August 20, both sides had spent the better part of 2 years fighting over the shape of the case itself before ever getting to argue the actual facts in front of a jury. That's the backdrop the trial finally opened against, a narrowed set of charges, a jury whose identities are shielded, and a defendant who spent every month since his arrest in a cell, watching his case get more complicated by the week. As the trial date closed in, the pre-trial hearings turned into a preview of exactly how brutal this fight was going to be. Prosecutors laid out just how much firepower they were bringing. At a pre-trial hearing in August, the government revealed it had 35 witnesses ready for trial, with 20 of those being key witnesses. That's a massive witness list for a case built around a single 2022 shooting, and it signaled prosecutors were planning to build a wide-ranging narrative, even within the narrowed scope of the trial. The lyrics fight kept resurfacing right up to the wire, too. Prosecutors leaned again on the 2021 track, "Pissed Me Off," arguing it showed intent to enact revenge on those responsible for Bennett's death. Durk's team kept pushing the same counter it always had, that the song was grief, not a confession. But the judge had already ruled the music video could go in front of the jury, and that ruling stood. Then came one of the sharpest moments of the entire pretrial process, the hearing where Judge Fitzgerald openly scolded prosecutors for how they'd handled the timing of the new charges. Billboard's report from inside the courtroom captured just how unusual that dressing down was, describing the judge as sharply admonishing the government for tacking on additional charges last month and then requesting to push back Durk's already delayed trial. That's a federal judge on the record, essentially telling prosecutors they'd overplayed their hand. For Durk's camp, that hearing became a rallying point, proof in their eyes that the government's case had cracks even before a single witness took the stand. India Royale was in the room for some of this. She was present for the hearing where Fitzgerald ruled in Durk's favor on the severance motion, sitting through a session that stretched roughly 40 minutes as the judge pressed prosecutors on their delay. That's a wife showing up, in person, to watch her husband's legal team win a battle that could shape whether he ever leaves federal custody. It's a different kind of reaction than a statement or a post. It's just presence, showing up for every round of a fight that's dragged on for nearly 2 years. There were smaller wins scattered through the pre-trial process too, the kind that don't make headlines on their own, but matter to a defense team building a case. Investigators reportedly found no incriminating material on Durk's iCloud or Twitter accounts, which his camp treated as a quiet but meaningful data point. Prosecutors also confirmed early on that they wouldn't be seeking the death penalty, removing the most extreme outcome from the table, even as the life sentence possibility remained very real. Not everything broke in Durk's favor, though. The motion his team filed to dismiss the case outright, built around the argument that prosecutors misled the grand jury, and later expanded to include the revelation that a judge and prosecutor had received threats, without the defense being told, was denied in January 2026. That ruling meant the case was always heading toward trial, no matter how hard the defense pushed on the legitimacy of how it was built. It's part of why the eventual win on severing the racketeering counts landed as such a significant moment for Durk's team. It was proof the fight wasn't hopeless, even after the dismissal motion failed. Through all of this, the reactions kept multiplying outside the courtroom too. Fans and commentators split hard on the case, some pointing to the years-long delays and the government's shifting charges as signs of a shaky prosecution, others pointing to the sheer volume of evidence, the 30,000-plus pages, the 35 witnesses, the machine gun fire outside the Beverly Center, as reason to believe this was always heading toward conviction. Hip-hop media outlets treated every hearing like an event, tracking Findling's comments outside the courthouse, tracking Royale's appearances, tracking every procedural twist as if it were a scoreboard. And in a strange twist of scheduling, Durk's case became just one of 4 major hip-hop trials converging on the same month. Days before Durk's trial opened, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis faced jurors in Las Vegas over the killing of Tupac Shakur nearly 3 decades earlier. Yella Beezy and All-Star JR had their own federal proceedings scheduled before August closed out too. One roundup covering the month captured just how packed the calendar had become, noting that a packed hip-hop criminal trial calendar puts Keefe D, Lil Durk, Yella Beezy, and All-Star JR before juries this month, with a murder case that has followed hip-hop for nearly 3 decades finally headed before a jury. That convergence put an even brighter spotlight on Durk's case than it might have carried on its own. Every outlet covering the Keefe D trial found itself covering Durk's in the same breath, and the comparisons between the 2 cases, one about a killing that happened in 1996, one about a killing that happened in 2022, became inescapable in hip-hop media for the entire month. By the time jury selection wrapped and opening statements began, the shape of the trial had been set by nearly 2 years of pretrial fighting. a narrowed set of charges centered on the 2022 shooting, a jury whose names are being kept confidential, 35 witnesses waiting to testify, lyrics already cleared for use as evidence, and a defendant who spent every day since October 2024 in custody, watching his lawyers win some rounds and lose others, while his wife and his family kept their public support running the entire time. Right now, the trial that could decide the rest of Lil Durk's life is underway in a Los Angeles federal courtroom. The severance win means the jury hearing this case is only weighing the 2022 shooting and the death of Xavier Robinson, not the Chicago allegations, not the Atlanta shooting, not the racketeering counts that came later. Those charges are set to be tried separately, on a date still being worked out between both sides. But the case in front of the jury right now still carries the possibility of a life sentence if Durk is convicted, and that's the number that shaped every reaction from his camp for the better part of 2 years. What's remarkable about this case, when you step back from the individual hearings and rulings, is how consistent every reaction from Durk's side has stayed since the day he was arrested. His attorney has framed every hearing as a fight worth having, celebrating wins loudly and pushing back hard on setbacks. His wife has shown up in courtrooms, posted her support publicly, and put her name behind statements accusing the government of building a flawed case. His family issued their own statement early on, asking fans and the culture to stand behind him while the case played out. None of those reactions have wavered, even as the charges against him grew heavier and the trial date kept sliding further away. The stakes of this trial go beyond just Durk himself too. 5 associates from his own label, only the family, are co-defendants in this case, meaning the outcome doesn't just shape his future, it shapes theirs as well. The trial involves American rapper Lil Durk Banks and 5 associates from his record label, Only the Family. That's a label built on the backs of artist Durk brought up himself, now sitting in the same courtroom, facing the same jury, tied to the same set of allegations that trace back to King Von's death almost 6 years ago. There's also the music industry dimension that's run underneath this entire case since the beginning. Durk didn't stop releasing music while locked up. His 9th studio album came out in March 2025, a project that had already been delayed multiple times because of his arrest. Released on March 28, 2025, marking Durk's 9th studio album, a project repeatedly delayed due to his October 2024 arrest. Originally slated for October 18, 2024, facing 4 postponements as Durk fought federal charges. That's an artist who kept working, kept releasing, kept his name in front of fans even from inside a cell, all while the case against him kept expanding. His broader influence never really faded during any of this either. His work with artists like Future, Lil Baby, Drake, and Jhené Aiko helped shape the sound of 2020's hip-hop, while his Only the Family collective pushed new voices to national prominence. And to many fans, Durk was not just a key artist, but a cultural anchor. That's part of why this case has pulled in so much attention beyond just true crime or court-watching circles. It's a defendant whose music has been inescapable for the better part of a decade, now sitting in a courtroom, where a jury will decide if he ever gets to make another record as a free man. For India Royale, the personal stakes have played out just as publicly as the legal ones. She stood beside him through hearings, through statements, through nearly 2 years of a relationship tested by federal custody and constant media attention. Her message has stayed the same since the earliest days of the case, that she wasn't switching up, that she stood behind him regardless of what the outside world had to say. That kind of public loyalty sustained across almost 2 years without bail, without a resolution, and now stretching into an actual jury trial, says as much about the human stakes of this case as any legal filing does for Durk himself. Everything that's happened since his arrest, every denied bond, every delayed trial date, every new indictment, has led to this exact moment. A jury in Los Angeles, weighing evidence tied to a 2022 shooting outside a gas station near the Beverly Center, deciding whether the man who built Only the Family from nothing spends the rest of his life in prison or walks out to face a second trial on the charges that got severed. His team has spent 2 years fighting to get the case narrowed down to exactly this: one shooting, one jury, one set of facts. Whether that strategy pays off is now sitting in the hands of 16 jurors whose names the public will likely never know. What happens next depends entirely on what that jury decides. But every reaction that got Lil Durk to this point, his legal team's aggressive pretrial fighting, his wife's public loyalty, His family's insistence on his innocence has already been on full display for anyone paying attention. The sentence hasn't been handed down yet, but the reaction to everything leading up to it has been loud, consistent, and impossible to miss.